Imagine a Nobel Prize winning scientist whose groundbreaking work birthed a world-renowned medical institute, being refused care at its very doors. Not because she couldn't afford it, but because of an arrogant administrator's snap judgment. Stay with me, because you're going to love how this empire of greed collapses under the weight of its own prejudice. Meet Dr. Aris Thorne, a visionary born into the challenging embrace of rural Louisiana. From a young age, Aris possessed an insatiable curiosity, a mind that saw patterns and possibilities where others saw only obstacles. She channeled her brilliance into a relentless pursuit of medical solutions, specifically a cure for a debilitating autoimmune disease that had long plagued her community. Years of tireless research in a quiet university lab culminated in a eureka moment, a revolutionary treatment that promised to change millions of lives. Her perseverance was not for fame, but for the profound impact she knew her work could achieve. 5 years prior, the world recognized her genius. In Stockholm, Sweden, Dr. Aris Thorne, poised and humble, accepted the Nobel Prize in Medicine. Her acceptance speech wasn't a boast of personal achievement, but a passionate plea for accessible healthcare, for the global impact of her discovery to reach every corner of humanity. She spoke of countless lives already touched, families restored, and the hope her treatment offered. The magnitude of her contribution was undeniable, a testament to her unwavering dedication to science and human well-being. Despite her global acclaim, Aris remained committed to her principles. 3 years ago, through a meticulously constructed blind trust and her astute legal team, she licensed her revolutionary patent to a fledgling medical group. Her conditions were non-negotiable. The treatment must remain affordable for all, and a significant portion of the profits would fund her independent, ethical research. The new institution, driven by her innovation, was named the Aris Thorne Institute, a subtle, personal tribute to her late grandfather, a man who instilled in her the values of service and integrity. On paper, her name was absent, her influence a quiet, unseen force. Fueled by Aris's unparalleled medical treatment, the Aris Thorne Institute rapidly ascended, becoming a gleaming beacon of medical innovation. Its reputation soared, its wealth accumulated, all thanks to the widespread success of the very discovery she had quietly licensed. While the Institute basked in public glory, Aris remained an anonymous benefactor, content to focus on her independent research, unaware that the very foundation she laid was beginning to shift under the influence of new, arrogant leadership. The stage was set for a dramatic collision between true genius and superficial pride. The opulent executive office of the Aris Thorne Institute was a shrine to self-importance, and its high priest was Director Sterling Vance. He sat behind a gleaming mahogany desk, a man meticulously tailored in an expensive suit, surveying the cityscape from his penthouse perch. Every award, every framed article about the Institute's success felt like a personal accolade to him. Vance prided himself on the Institute's prestige, its soaring public image, and, most importantly, its maximizing revenue. Patient care was a metric to be managed, scientific integrity a slogan for brochures. He was the architect of this empire, he believed, oblivious to the quiet genius whose very work was the foundation supporting his lavish lifestyle. Another record quarter? He'd often muse, adjusting his silk tie, never once wondering whose genius truly made it possible. In the polished, impersonal boardroom, Director Vance held court. He dismissed concerns about patient affordability with a wave of his hand. "We are a premier institution, not a community clinic," he declared, his voice resonating with unearned authority. "Our focus must be on exclusive patient services, high-profit procedures. That's how we maintain our market position." A junior board member timidly raised a point about the founder's original vision for accessible research. Vance cut him off, a dismissive smile playing on his lips. "Nonsense. Sentimentality doesn't pay for state-of-the-art facilities. Profits do. And thanks to my leadership, profits are exactly what we deliver." The air in the room grew thick with unspoken frustration, but no one dared challenge his iron grip on the Institute's new, alarming priorities. Miles away, nestled within a discreet, cutting-edge facility, Dr. Aris Thorne moved with a quiet intensity. This was her sanctuary, far from the public eye and the corporate posturing. Dressed in a simple lab coat, she meticulously observed cells under a powerful microscope, her mind alight with new possibilities. Dr. Lena Hansen, her loyal lead researcher, approached, a tablet in hand. Aris, the gene sequencing for the new Parkinson's variant is showing a promising response to the modified compound. Aris looked up, a rare, gentle smile gracing her lips. Excellent, Lena. It's always about the next step, isn't it? The next life we can touch. Her satisfaction was profound, driven by a genuine scientific curiosity and an unwavering commitment to patient well-being, a stark contrast to the greed consuming the Aris Thorne Institute. Later that evening, in her private study, Aris sat surrounded by complex financial spreadsheets. Lena entered, a frown etched on her face. More reports from the Aris Thorne Institute. Aris. Vance is pushing for even higher service fees. Patient complaints are up, and they've diverted funds from several critical research grants. Aris's thoughtful expression remained unchanged, but a subtle tension gripped her jaw. I'm aware, Lena, she replied, her voice measured. I've been monitoring their trajectory. My initial intent was to allow them autonomy, but it seems their priorities have fundamentally shifted. They've strayed too far from the principles Aris instilled. She looked at the figures, the vast sums representing her silent, unseen influence, and a steely resolve began to harden her gaze. The next morning, a subtle, persistent ache settled in Aris Thorne's shoulder. Nothing urgent, but enough to warrant a checkup. She considered her options, then a quiet plan began to form. The Aris Thorne Institute was conveniently located, and perhaps it was time for a first-hand observation. Not as Dr. Aris Thorne, Nobel laureate and silent benefactor, but as a regular patient. She chose simple, comfortable clothes. Dark trousers, a muted sweater, practical walking shoes. No designer labels, no flashy accessories. Just a woman seeking medical care. She wanted to see the Institute, her legacy, through unbiased eyes. Little did she know, this minor ailment was about to become the major catalyst for a dramatic reckoning. The Aris Thorne Institute wasn't just a building. It was a gleaming monument to modern medicine, its grand lobby a testament to a vision, though one now subtly twisted. Dr. Aris Thorne stepped through its automated glass doors, a woman of quiet dignity, her Nobel Prize and immense wealth utterly invisible beneath a simple linen dress and comfortable sneakers. The air hummed with the muted luxury of polished marble, expensive art, and the soft murmur of countless conversations. Yet, as Aris observed the bustling scene, staff hurrying with an almost detached efficiency, patients waiting with a subdued patience, she felt a familiar pang. The opulence was undeniable, but the warmth, the genuine care that had been the cornerstone of her initial dream, felt conspicuously absent. It was a gilded cage of healthcare, a beautiful facade masking a growing impersonality. Aris approached the main reception, a sleek, curved counter manned by a woman named Clara, whose perfectly coiffed hair seemed as unyielding as her expression. Clara, engrossed in a phone call, barely spared Aris a dismissive glance. Yes, the director insists on the platinum package for this one, she chirped into the receiver, a tone of practiced deference. When Aris finally managed to catch her eye, Clara offered a curt, almost imperceptible nod. General admissions? Queue to your left, far end. We're quite busy today. Her gesture was perfunctory, her eyes already flitting back to her screen, dismissing Aris as just another face in the crowd. The institute she had painstakingly built, the vision she had nurtured, was now fronted by an indifference that cut deeper than any insult. Following Clara's indifferent directive, Aris joined a steadily growing line for general admissions. Here, the polished gleam of the lobby gave way to a more human and far more frustrating reality. Long wait times stretched, visibly fraying the nerves of patients huddled in uncomfortable chairs. Aris listened, her expression thoughtful, as whispers of discontent drifted through the air. Another bill, another surprise fee. One woman sighed to her companion. And the doctor barely spent 5 minutes with me. An older gentleman grumbled about the impersonal service, a stark contrast to the Institute's glossy brochures. Even a senior nurse, her face etched with exhaustion, could only offer a quick, "Apologies for the delay, we're a bit short-staffed," before hurrying away. The Institute was cracking under the weight of its own ambition, and Aris was seeing it all, unfiltered from the ground up. As she waited, Aris's gaze drifted across the waiting room, seeing not just the present, but the ghost of a past vision. She thought of her grandfather, Aris Thorne, a man who believed in compassionate care above all else, whose name graced this very institution. Her initial goals for the institute had been so clear: cutting-edge science married with accessible, empathetic healthcare for all. To see it now, a fortress of prestige where human connection was an afterthought, sent a wave of profound disappointment through her. This wasn't just a deviation, it was a betrayal of a legacy. A quiet resolve began to simmer within her, a flicker in her intelligent eyes. She hadn't come here to fix things, but perhaps, she realized, things were broken enough to demand her attention. Finally, her name was called simply Thorne. She was led to a consultation room where a young resident, Dr. Ben Carter, greeted her with a genuine, if slightly harried, smile. Unlike Clara, Dr. Carter looked directly at her, his eyes warm and professional. "Dr. Thorne, apologies for the wait. We're a little overwhelmed today." He quickly reviewed her symptoms, asked pertinent questions, and efficiently arranged for further diagnostic tests. His manner was a welcome, if fleeting, reminder that not all humanity had been drained from the Aris Thorne Institute. It was a small spark of hope in a system that seemed increasingly cold. A brief moment of respect before the storm was truly upon her. Dr. Aris Thorne moved through the bustling corridor, a quiet presence amidst the polished chaos of the Aris Thorne Institute. Her casual attire, a simple, dark pantsuit and comfortable flats, allowed her to blend into the background, an observer in the very empire she had painstakingly built. She was heading towards the diagnostic labs, a minor inconvenience her only agenda. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. Down the opposite end of the hallway, a formidable figure emerged. A human tidal wave of tailored ambition. Director Sterling Vance, flanked by two fawning executives, swept past with an air of self-importance so thick it felt tangible. He didn't acknowledge Aris, merely offered a dismissive, fleeting glance that skimmed over her, registering nothing of consequence. The true architect of the institute, rendered invisible by the very man who benefited most from her genius. They were two worlds colliding, yet only one was aware of the impending tremor. Aris found herself in the quiet, modern MRI waiting area. The soft hum of advanced machinery, a stark contrast to the human disquiet she'd observed earlier. She settled into a sleek chair, her gaze drifting over the institute's state-of-the-art equipment. These very machines, gleaming with diagnostic promise, were a direct result of her unwavering dedication, her tireless research, and her strategic investment. Millions had flowed from her silent trusts, transforming a fledgling idea into this medical titan. Yet, a growing sense of unease settled in her gut. This wasn't the vision she had nurtured, the legacy she had intended. The institute felt less like a beacon of accessible healing, and more like a fortress of exclusivity, its technological marvels overshadowed by an increasingly impersonal, profit-driven agenda. The soul of her grandfather's vision, and her own, was slowly being eroded. Moments later, the quiet sanctuary of the MRI department was shattered. Director Vance, with his entourage of executives and a bewildered department head, burst through the doors like a conquering general. He was on a grand tour for potential donors, his voice booming with self-congratulatory remarks. "As you can see, gentlemen," he gestured expansively at a gleaming MRI machine, "this state-of-the-art marvel, I personally ensured its acquisition. Only the best for Aris Thorne. We spare no expense in maintaining our position at the apex of medical innovation." He preened, basking in the polite nods of the donors, completely ignoring the actual patients waiting, or the busy technicians trying to work around his performative spectacle. His focus was entirely on the optics, the prestige, the illusion of his own indispensable genius, completely blind to the true source of the Institute's brilliance. Just as Vance was mid-sentence, pontificating about the Institute's unparalleled commitment to excellence, an orderly called out, "Dr. Thorne, we're ready for you." Aris rose, her name a quiet ripple in the cacophony Vance created. But as she stepped forward, Vance's self-important group blocked her path. He glanced at her, not with recognition, but with a familiar, dismissive condescension. His eyes, programmed to see only wealth and status, registered only her simple attire, a woman who clearly didn't fit his carefully curated image of a premium patient. Without a second thought, he waved her off with a curt hand gesture. "Wait your turn, ma'am. This is important. These gentlemen have pressing matters. The implication was clear. You are not important. Humiliated, Aris felt a familiar sting, a mix of anger and disbelief. Her gaze, however, remained calm, though a quiet storm began to brew behind her eyes. Aris stepped aside, her heart thrumming with a fierce, quiet indignation. She took a deep, steadying breath, fighting back the wave of anger and disbelief that threatened to overwhelm her. This wasn't just about a minor ailment or a rude encounter. This was about the very soul of the institution she had brought into being, the legacy of her grandfather, twisted and corrupted by arrogance and prejudice. The Aris Thorne Institute, built on a foundation of scientific integrity and accessible care, had become a monument to vanity and exclusion. A cold, hard resolve settled over her. This would not stand. With a calm, deliberate movement, Dr. Aris Thorne pulled out her phone. The time for silent observation was over. The time for decisive action had arrived. Director Sterling Vance concluded his self-important tour segment, a triumphant smirk plastered across his face. He gestured grandly to the sleek MRI machine, taking credit for its very existence, before his eyes landed on Dr. Aris Thorne, still standing in the hallway, phone in hand. His smirk curdled into a sneer. "Are you still here?" he demanded, his voice echoing with an insufferable condescension. He didn't wait for an answer, stepping closer, towering over her. "This, madam, is a premium facility, designed for our most discerning clientele, for those who truly understand the value of exceptional care." He paused, letting his gaze sweep over her simple attire. "Perhaps you should try the public hospital down the street. I hear they cater to all kinds." Aris met his gaze, her expression unreadable, a silent testament to a lifetime of similar slights, but in her eyes, a new, steely resolve had begun to form. The air thickened, a palpable tension for anyone but Vance himself. Aris, unwavering, brought her phone to her ear. She ignored Vance's continued disdain, his dismissive huff of air. Her fingers moved with a practiced calm, dialing a number she knew by heart. When the connection clicked, her voice was low, firm, and precise, a quiet declaration of war. "It's time," she stated, each word a hammer blow against the Institute's foundation. "Initiate the full withdrawal of all investments and licensing agreements. Effective immediately." Vance, still oblivious, let out a soft, mocking laugh. He thought it was a pathetic, empty threat from a disgruntled patient. He had no idea he was listening to the sound of his empire collapsing, brick by agonizing brick. Vance's laugh grew louder, echoing in the polished hallway. "Do you honestly think some phone call will change anything? This institute," he puffed out his chest, "is untouchable. A fortress of medical excellence and financial stability." His executives, who had witnessed Aris's calm, resolute call, exchanged uneasy glances. They knew the name, Thorne, carried weight, even if they didn't know this, Dr. Thorne. They tried to subtly usher Vance away, sensing a storm brewing, but his arrogance blinded him. "Just another disgruntled, entitled patient," he muttered, waving a dismissive hand at Aris as if swatting a fly. He believed he was in control, that his superficial judgment was absolute. How wrong he was. Minutes later, Vance strutted back into his opulent office, basking in his perceived victory. He settled into his ergonomic chair, a self-satisfied grin on his face. This was his kingdom, untouchable indeed. But then, his assistant, a usually unflappable woman, entered with a strained expression. "Director Vance," she began, her voice tight, "there's been an unexpected hold on the quarterly research grant payment from the Thorne Trust, and several key supply contracts just froze." Vance waved a dismissive hand, still riding the high of his hallway triumph. "A clerical error, surely. We'll sort it out. Probably some automated system glitch." He dismissed the first tremor of the earthquake, utterly unaware that the ground beneath his feet was already beginning to crack. Meanwhile, in the grand, marble-clad lobby of the Aris Thorne Institute, a different kind of arrival was underway. Two sleek, black SUVs, polished to a mirror sheen, glided to a halt at the main entrance. The doors opened with a soft hiss, and out stepped Dr. Lena Hansen, Aris's brilliant lead researcher, followed by a formidable lead attorney and a sharp-suited financial advisor. Impeccably dressed, their faces set with a grim, purposeful determination, they strode confidently into the hushed lobby. Their presence, their aura of quiet power, caused an immediate stir. Staff whispered. Patients looked up, a ripple of unease and curiosity spreading through the grand hall. The cavalry had arrived, and the true force of Dr. Aris Thorne's response was about to be unleashed. The grand lobby buzzed with a sudden charged silence as two figures, Dr. Lena Hansen and a formidable lead attorney, strode purposefully past the confused staff and curious patients. Their eyes, however, were fixed on one person, Dr. Aris Thorne, standing calmly in the MRI department hallway. They bypassed everyone, making a beeline for the woman dressed in unassuming clothes. Lena's voice, though professional, carried an undeniable warmth. "Dr. Thorne, we came as soon as you called. Are you well?" The attorney, a stern man in a tailored suit, added, "We're ready to proceed with the withdrawal, ma'am." Gasps rippled through the onlookers. The very woman just dismissed as another patient was being addressed with such profound respect, her name spoken with reverence. The commotion finally reached Director Sterling Vance, who, having just completed his self-congratulatory tour, stormed back down the hallway. He pushed through the murmuring crowd, his face contorted in annoyance. What is the meaning of this? Who are these people causing such a scene? His eyes landed on Lena. "Dr. Hansen, what are you doing here with her?" He gestured dismissively at Aris. Aris turned slowly, her gaze calm but piercing, meeting Vance's arrogant stare head-on. "I am Dr. Aris Thorne, Director Vance," she stated, her voice steady and clear, cutting through the tense air. "The Dr. Thorne." Vance's smug expression instantly vanished, replaced by a look of profound, sickening disbelief. The truth, a tidal wave of reality, crashed over Sterling Vance. Aris stood before him not as a disgruntled patient, but as the quiet architect of his entire empire. "I am the Nobel laureate whose patent funds this entire institute," Aris continued, her voice gaining a steely edge. "And I am withdrawing every cent." The lead attorney stepped forward, a briefcase clicking open, revealing a stack of legal documents. He laid them out on a nearby counter, their official weight seeming to press down on Vance. Vance's jaw dropped, his eyes wide with horror. His world, built on arrogance and borrowed genius, was unraveling right before his eyes. Panic seized Vance. He stammered, his voice cracking. "Dr. Thorne, please! This is a misunderstanding. I didn't know. The Institute needs you!" He lunged forward, a desperate hand reaching for Aris's arm, but the lead attorney stepped smoothly between them, a silent, unyielding barrier. Aris remained unmoving, her expression resolute, a stark contrast to Vance's frantic desperation. He looked pathetic, a man stripped bare of his self-importance, begging for mercy from the very person he had tried to humiliate. The dramatic irony was palpable, a bitter pill for Vance, a satisfying vindication for every onlooker. Aris looked Vance directly in the eye, her voice firm, carrying the weight of years of quiet integrity. "Respect is not something you earn with a title or wealth. It's something you give to everyone, regardless of their appearance." Her gaze held his, unwavering. "You should have remembered that before you judged me in my own institute." With that powerful pronouncement, she turned her back on him, a definitive end to their interaction. Behind her, the lead attorney and financial advisor began to sign the withdrawal papers, the scratching of pens sealing the Aris Thorne Institute's fate and Vance's downfall. Director Sterling Vance stormed back into his opulent office, his face still flushed with a mix of fury and bewildered indignation. He slammed the door, convinced he'd just dealt with an irrelevant nuisance. But the silence in the room was quickly shattered by the urgent knock of his financial officer, Mr. Davies, whose usually placid demeanor was replaced with outright panic. "Director Vance, sir, you need to see this," Davies stammered, thrusting a tablet into Vance's hand. The screen showed a cascade of red alerts, frozen accounts, canceled supply contracts, and a stark notification that the Institute's primary patent royalty stream, the very bedrock of its wealth, had ceased. "It's all gone, sir," Davies choked out. The main funding source. It's been withdrawn. Effective immediately. Vance stared, his world tilting. He clutched his head, the numbers on the screen a blur of catastrophic ruin. How could a simple phone call, made by that woman, have unleashed such a financial earthquake? The news, as devastating as any viral pathogen, swept through the Aris Thorne Institute, faster than Vance's private jet could fly. Whispers turned into hushed shouts in the employee lounge, down sterile corridors and behind clinic doors. Did you hear? That woman, she's the Dr. Thorne, the Nobel winner? Vance actually told her to go to a public hospital? For many, a quiet, almost vindicated satisfaction settled in. They'd seen Vance's arrogance, felt the shift in priorities, and now, justice was knocking. But for others, a chilling fear for their livelihoods began to spread. The financial reports, now leaking faster than a faulty IV drip, painted a grim picture. By late afternoon, a steady stream of envelopes began appearing on HR desks, resignations from key researchers and talented staff, disillusioned by Vance's leadership, and now, by the Institute's certain demise. But the internal chaos was only the beginning. The story, a dramatic tale of a Nobel laureate humiliated by the very institution built on her genius, was too potent to stay confined within clinic walls. A patient, who had witnessed the entire confrontation in the MRI department, captured the essence of Vance's dismissive remarks in a viral post. Within hours, it exploded across social media. Hashtag Nobel denied care. Hashtag justice for Aris. News outlets, sensing blood in the water, quickly picked up the scent. Headlines blared. Nobel laureate humiliated by own institute's director. Arrogance costs medical empire millions. Public outrage mounted like a storm, fueling a relentless torrent of calls for Vance's immediate dismissal. The Institute's carefully constructed facade of prestige crumbled under the weight of digital condemnation. Late into the night, Vance sat hunched in his office, disheveled, besieged by his frantic PR team. They had tried every spin, every deflection, every attempt to blame Dr. Thorne for being unreasonable. But the public wasn't buying it. "Sir, the trending topics are unrecoverable," his lead PR consultant reported, a grim expression on her face. "Our approval ratings have plummeted. Donors are withdrawing. We're facing a complete brand collapse." Vance's denials, his frantic attempts to paint Aris as a vindictive opportunist, fell flat against the undeniable truth of her Nobel status and the viral evidence of his prejudice. He watched in horror as screens around him displayed a relentless barrage of negative coverage, his once impeccable image now irrevocably tarnished. There was no escape. The Aris Thorne Institute's board, a collection of powerful but ultimately pragmatic individuals, convened an emergency meeting at dawn. The decision was swift, decisive, and unanimous. Director Sterling Vance was summoned, looking haggard and defeated. He walked into a room where no one met his eye. The board chairman, a man who once championed Vance's business acumen, simply slid a pre-written resignation letter across the polished mahogany table. "Director Vance," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion, "you have two choices. Resign immediately or be terminated for gross mismanagement and face legal action for the irreparable damage to this institution's reputation and finances." Stripped of all power, his empire dissolving around him, Vance signed. His public downfall within the institute was complete, a hollow victory for arrogance. Months later, the once bustling Aris Thorne Institute was a ghost of its former self. The grand lobby, once filled with the hopeful and the hurried, now echoed with an unsettling silence. Empty patient rooms lined deserted corridors, their advanced equipment gathering dust. The gleaming floors reflected nothing but the vacant stillness. Outside, bold for sale signs, emblazoned with the harsh red of impending bankruptcy, stood stark against the elegant facade. The Institute, a marvel built entirely on Dr. Aris Thorne's genius and sustained by her silent investment, had collapsed without her backing, a testament to how quickly a foundation of arrogance crumbles when true merit is withdrawn. It was a shell, a monument to a prideful man's folly. And what of Sterling Vance? His lavish executive office, his expensive suits, his air of untouchable importance, all were gone. He was found in a small, run-down apartment, far from the gilded cages he once inhabited. His tailored arrogance had been stripped away, replaced by a bitter regret that gnawed at him daily. The man who once dismissed a Nobel laureate now muttered to himself, watching news reports about the Aris Thorne Institute's ignominious closure. Each headline, each somber report, was a hammer blow to his hollowed-out pride. He had lost everything: his reputation, his career, his wealth. He was a disgraced, bankrupt figure, a cautionary tale of how quickly prejudice can consume a man's entire world. His empire was rubble, and he was left to wander its ruins. But where one institution crumbled, another, built on integrity, began to rise. Dr. Aris Thorne, channeling her withdrawn funds, established the Aris Thorne Foundation for Accessible Healthcare. It was a place where patient care truly came first, where cutting-edge research served humanity, not profit margins. Dr. Lena Hansen, Aris's loyal lead researcher, joined her, bringing her sharp mind and unwavering dedication. And the empathetic young resident, Dr. Ben Carter, who had shown Aris kindness in the MRI waiting room, found his true calling there too. This vibrant community health center embodied Aris's original vision, a beacon of ethical medicine, proving that genuine scientific curiosity and compassion could build something far more enduring than any empire of greed. In the main hall of the thriving Aris Thorne Foundation, a beautiful bronze plaque was unveiled. It honored the enduring legacy of Aris Thorne, her late grandfather, whose values of compassion and community Aris so fiercely upheld. The plaque implicitly celebrated Aris herself, the quiet architect of this new, better institution. The Foundation's rapid success wasn't just about medical breakthroughs. It was a living testament that ethical leadership, universal respect, and true merit would always prevail over superficiality and prejudice. Aris watched the bustling, happy patients, a deep sense of peace and purpose settling in her heart. Her legacy, once nearly co-opted, was not only reclaimed but amplified, shining brighter than ever before. The story of Dr. Aris Thorne became more than just a local scandal. It transformed into a national legend. It rippled through the medical community, prompting other institutions to reevaluate their policies on patient care, staff diversity, and ethical leadership. Conferences were held, new guidelines were drafted, all inspired by the dramatic fall of the Aris Thorne Institute and the rise of the Foundation. The community, awakened by the stark contrast, embraced the powerful message: true worth transcends superficial judgment, and respect is a universal currency. Dr. Thorne didn't just teach Sterling Vance a personal lesson. She taught the entire community one. Prejudice has a cost, and sometimes that cost is everything. But integrity? Integrity builds foundations that stand the test of time. The story of Dr. Aris Thorne and director Sterling Vance is more than just a tale of comeuppance. It's a profound lesson etched into the very foundations of what was once the Aris Thorne Institute. Vance, blinded by greed and prejudice, lost everything. His empire, built on the stolen genius of another, crumbled the moment he disrespected its true architect. Aris, on the other hand, didn't just reclaim her legacy. She transformed it, building a new, thriving foundation that genuinely serves humanity. This powerful saga reminds us that prejudice always carries a profound cost, and true respect must be extended to everyone, regardless of their appearance or perceived station. So remember, never judge a book by its cover. The person you dismiss today, the one you deem unworthy based on superficial glances, might just be the quiet force holding your entire world together. Dr. Aris Thorne proved that true power isn't loud or flashy. It's in the quiet brilliance, the unwavering integrity, and the strategic mind that can move mountains or dismantle corrupt institutions. Don't underestimate anyone, for the worth you fail to see could be the very foundation you stand upon. If you found Dr. Thorne's story inspiring and her triumph satisfying, then hit that like button and let us know. What was your biggest takeaway from this powerful narrative of justice? Have you ever witnessed or experienced a similar moment where prejudice met its rightful end? Share your thoughts and comment where you're watching from. We'd love to know how far this story of resilience and truth travels. And if you believe in stories where brilliance overcomes bias, where integrity triumphs over arrogance, and where justice truly comes full circle, then make sure to subscribe. Join our community for more empowering narratives that prove that talent, perseverance, and a deep sense of purpose can always overcome adversity. Don't miss out on the next chapter of triumph. Instrumental music swells and fades into channel branding and suggested videos.